At my niece's birthday party, my brother-in-law shouted across the yard, "Don't worry, kids, if you work hard enough, maybe you'll end up slightly less useless than Auntie." I laughed it off as the parents chuckled uncomfortably. But when his secret life exploded into public shame a year later, I was the one standing strong while he lost everything. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am. This all started at my niece Olivia's birthday party in Denton, Texas. It was a hot Saturday in June. You could smell sunscreen and melted frosting in the air. My sister Maggie was running around, making sure everything was perfect. She always does that, throws herself into parties like she's trying to prove something. I came up from Austin for it. I don't have kids. I don't have a husband. Hell, I don't even have a full-time job right now. I do freelance editing work for indie writers and small blogs, and I help out at a local bookstore a couple days a week. It's not flashy, but I like my quiet life. I like having time to read. I like not being trapped in some soul-killing office job. But people like Scott, my brother-in-law, don't see value in that. Scott's the type of guy who walks into a room and makes sure everyone knows he's the most important person there. He wears watches that cost more than my rent and calls himself an investor. What that really means is he brags about crypto, stocks, and some real estate scam he says isn't a scam. He's married to my sister Maggie, who honestly deserves better, but she's been with him since college. She's the kind of person who hates confrontation. So she nods along when he talks crap and then pretends she didn't hear it. That day, everything felt fine at first. There were kids running through sprinklers, a bounce house blowing around in the wind, and adults sipping beer in folding chairs on the lawn. I stayed close to Maggie, helped her pass out juice boxes, cleaned up some spilled ice cream. Just being useful like I always try to be. Then Scott opened his mouth. He was standing by the grill, drink in hand, talking to a few of the dads. The kids were near him listening because Olivia always sticks close to her dad at these things. I was just a few steps away, pouring myself a cup of lemonade. And then, loud and clear, Scott shouted across the yard, "Don't worry, kids. If you work hard enough, maybe you'll end up slightly less useless than Auntie." Everything went quiet for a second. Then came the laughter. Awkward, thin chuckles from some of the adults. Like they didn't know what to do with what just happened. Like maybe he was kidding, or maybe I wouldn't care. Maggie looked over at me with this fake smile on her face, the kind that says, "Please don't make a scene." So I smiled too. I laughed. I held up my lemonade and said, "Guess I'll just go cry in the corner with my useless degrees." Then everyone laughed harder, like I'd given them permission to. But inside, I felt like someone had dumped a bucket of cold water on me. This wasn't the first time Scott had taken shots at me. He'd made comments before about how I was still figuring it out, or living that broke artist life. At Christmas, he joked that I could wrap gifts in rejection letters instead of paper. At Thanksgiving, he told me I should just marry rich if I wasn't going to make any money. Every time I let it go, I told myself it wasn't worth it, that it was just Scott being Scott. But something changed that day. I looked around and saw parents who barely knew me laughing like it was okay. I saw kids looking at me confused because they didn't understand the joke but knew it was mean. And I saw Maggie look away. That was when I decided I was done being the quiet one. I wasn't going to fight him there, not in front of the kids. But I wasn't going to forget. I was going to wait and I was going to watch. Because guys like Scott, they always screw up. And when they do, they never think anyone's watching. But I was. After the party, I drove home in silence. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I just sat with it. I started paying more attention after that day. Not in a creepy way, just sharper. Focused. I looked at Scott like a project. I wanted to understand why someone like him felt so bold humiliating me in front of family. I wanted to know what he was hiding because people like him always hide something. I started by watching his social media. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, he posted nonstop. Selfies in front of expensive cars, hustle mindset quotes, and screenshots of stock trading apps. But it was all surface. The same flashy garbage. Then I noticed something. He had this habit of tagging weird locations on his photos. Like a selfie in his home office would be tagged in Miami, or a dinner photo with Maggie would say Vegas. I checked Maggie's page. None of their trips matched up. She was posting pictures of Olivia's ballet class the same weekend he was supposedly on a yacht in Florida. So, I made a private burner account. I started following people he followed. I went deep into old comments. I know it sounds obsessive, but it was like a puzzle. And one day, I found a piece that didn't fit. There was this woman named Tasha. Mid-30s, yoga teacher, lived in Houston. She'd liked almost every post of his for the past year. Sometimes she commented with little flame emojis or hearts. One time she wrote, "Miss you already," under a post he claimed was from a networking trip in Chicago. I clicked her profile. Public. Tons of photos of her and Scott. Nothing obvious, but close. Too close for just friends. He was in the background of a couple selfies at her apartment. They had matching wine glasses. I zoomed in and recognized his ugly silver bracelet in one of them. I saved everything. I didn't send it to Maggie. Not yet. Instead, I kept digging. Over the next few months, I watched his movements online. I checked public property records. He had put down a deposit on a second condo in Houston. It wasn't in his name, though. It was in Tasha's. But I found the money trail. Wire transfers from his investment firm. Turns out his business was mostly just flipping credit between LLCs. He was borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, moving numbers around to look rich. I copied bank screenshots, fake invoices, and emails I found linked to his dummy websites. It was all there. A fake life, held together by confidence and bullshit. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. It was Olivia's school fundraiser. Big community event. Food trucks, a raffle, local news crew. I showed up early, offered to help set up. Maggie was so happy I was there. I almost felt bad for her. Scott showed up late, loud as always. He parked his Escalade on the grass and made a joke about it being VIP parking. Everyone laughed. He loved that. An hour into the event, I asked Maggie if she could meet me near the back lot. I told her it was important. She came over, half worried, half distracted. "I need to show you something," I said. She looked confused. "Is Olivia okay?" "She's fine. This is about Scott." Her face changed instantly, like she knew something wasn't right, but didn't want to hear it. I handed her a folder, physical printouts, all neat and clean. "Where did you get this?" she asked quietly. "I've been watching him," I said. "For almost a year." Maggie went pale. She didn't say a word, just walked away holding the folder like it was a bomb. An hour later, she was gone. Scott looked around like he couldn't find his wallet. I knew exactly where she was. Home. Reading every disgusting thing I gave her. The next morning, it exploded. By the next morning, Maggie had changed the locks. She called me around 6:30 a.m. Her voice was quiet but calm. "I told him not to come back," she said. "I told him I knew everything. I expected tears, screaming, something. But she was cold, focused. He tried to lie at first," she said. "Said Tasha was just a friend. Said the money stuff was complicated. Then he saw the folder and went dead quiet." She hung up before I could say much. Just said thank you and promised to call back. But that day set off a chain of events none of us saw coming. Scott didn't just cheat on my sister. He built his whole identity on lies, and it was about to collapse. A few days later, Maggie filed for divorce. She froze their joint accounts and hired a forensic accountant. That's when things got even messier. Scott's business wasn't just a pile of bad loans and fake investments, it was illegal. He'd taken money from family friends, from church members, from Olivia's godparents. Told them it was going into real estate. It wasn't. It was paying off credit card bills, luxury vacations, and dinners with Tasha. One of the people he stole from? Maggie's childhood friend, Dana. Dana's husband had just lost his job. They gave Scott $15,000 from their savings. Thought it was safe. He told them they'd double it in 6 months. When Maggie found out, she lost it. She called Dana herself and told her the truth. Dana cried for 20 minutes on the phone. Then she posted the entire thing on Facebook. That post blew up. Local moms started commenting, sharing their own stories. 2 had also invested with Scott. 1 had gone to college with him and said he used to sell fake IDs. The comments got worse. Someone posted screenshots of Scott messaging younger women, barely legal girls, on Instagram. His messages were disgusting. Flirty, arrogant, sometimes creepy. It painted a whole new picture of who he really was. Within a week, his reputation in town was gone. The police got involved after a retired teacher came forward saying Scott had convinced her to invest her pension in a tech startup that didn't exist. I watched all of it unfold from my little apartment in Austin. And still, Scott hadn't said a word to me. Not a text, not an apology, not even a half-assed excuse. But then one night, he showed up at my door. It was almost midnight when I heard the knock. I looked through the peephole. It was him, Scott. He looked like hell. Eyes bloodshot, skin blotchy, shirt wrinkled and stained. His perfect hair was a mess. I didn't open the door. "What do you want?" I asked through the wood. "I need to talk to you," he said. "Please." I should have told him to leave. But I didn't. Maybe part of me wanted to see what he'd say. Maybe I wanted to see him squirm. I opened the door and stepped outside. I didn't invite him in. He looked around like someone was watching him. Then he said, "You destroyed my life." I laughed.
"No, Scott.
"You did that all on your own." "You think you're some kind of hero?" he snapped. "You're a nobody. You don't even have a real job. You're jealous because I had something." "You had nothing," I said. "You lied to everyone. You stole from our family. You humiliated me in front of kids." He looked at me, really looked like he was trying to figure out how I'd done it. How I, his quiet, useless sister-in-law, had pulled it off. "Do you even care what this did to Olivia?" he asked. "You ruined her family." That hit me harder than I expected. Because he was right about one thing. Olivia didn't deserve any of this. But I didn't flinch. She's better off knowing who her dad really is. He stepped forward, and for a second I thought he might hit me. But then he stopped, hands shaking. "I lost everything," he said. "The house. The business.
Maggie.
My daughter. You should have thought about that before you bought your girlfriend a condo with someone else's money." His face crumpled. That was the last thing I said to him. I walked back inside and shut the door in his face. That was the last time I ever saw him. In the weeks after, everything fell apart for Scott. He was sued by 3 families. The cops raided what was left of his office. Turns out he was also years behind on taxes. He ended up taking a plea deal for wire fraud and securities fraud. 7 years in federal prison. Maggie got full custody of Olivia. She moved into a small rental home near my place in Austin. It wasn't fancy, but it was safe. I helped her get a part-time job doing admin work for a friend of mine. Slowly, she started smiling again. She apologized to me one night. We were sitting on my couch, splitting a pizza. "I should have stood up for you," she said. "At that party. And before that." "I get it," I told her. I let him say those things for years. I let it slide too. Because here's the truth. I didn't just do this to expose Scott. I did it because I was tired of being the joke. Tired of playing nice. I let that man humiliate me for years. I smiled and made jokes because I thought it kept the peace. But it didn't. It just gave him more power. I had to become someone else to take him down. Someone colder, sharper, and yeah, maybe a little bit cruel. I don't regret what I did. But I don't feel proud either. Sometimes revenge doesn't feel like a victory. Sometimes it just feels like the weight finally came off your back, and now you're left staring at what it crushed on the way down. Scott will spend the next 7 years thinking about what he lost. I'll spend them trying to rebuild what he broke. Maybe that's justice. Or maybe it's just what we all deserve.